conducted via remote means in accordance with applicable law. This means that members of the public body, as well as members of the public, may access this meeting via virtual means. Participants may access this meeting through the remote meeting link as posted on the meeting agenda and through the town's online calendar. When required by law or allowed by the chair, persons wishing to provide public comment or otherwise participate in the meeting may do so by raising their hand or otherwise signaling their intent to speak. This meeting will be recorded. Please take care to mute your microphone unless you have been recognized by the chair. We will now confirm attendance of members. Please respond with present if you're on the call. Matthew Ronka.
Present.
Elise Mayalowski.
Present.
Lucia Lopez.
Present.
Michael King.
Present.
Parker Happ. Parker, I can see you, so I know you're here.
Present. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you now. Vikasath Prati.
Present.
Amna Dewan.
Present.
And unless something changed, Peter Mimo is not going to be here. And Rob Benson is here. And staff, Aniri.
Present.
And is Lori on? I know there was a possibility she wasn't going to be on tonight.
She's not on yet. I will note it down when she joins us,
Okay.
if she can.
All right. All right, let's just jump into our agenda. Meeting minutes for the December 1st, 2025 meeting. If anybody had any comments, did they get them to Aniri? Is there any additional comments?
I received comments from Lucia and Matthew, and they are already edited in the minutes.
Okay. All right. So those are the minutes that are in the folder as of today?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'd like to entertain a motion that the board approves the minutes as posted in our shared folder for our December 1st, 2025 meeting as written.
As labeled, updated, so moved.
Second.
Thanks, Matthew. Thanks, Michael. Roll call vote. Matthew Ronka.
Yes.
Elise Mayalowski.
Yes.
Lucia Lopez.
Yes.
Michael King.
Yes.
Parker Happ.
Yes.
Vikasath Prati.
Yes.
Amna Dewan.
Yes.
And Rob Benson is a yes. All right. So, I see this comment in the agenda, and I was on a copy of an email knowing that we have some work, I guess, to do to modify our MBTA zoning district. Aniri, I don't know if you want to give her an update, or Matthew, you're a representative for Zach. Do you want to give an update of like where things are?
Sure. So as I think most of the board's aware, we were down to the wire and kind of playing around with the MBTA zones pretty much to the last minute last time. And we never had time to get approval from the state on what we put forward. We kind of put through our best effort, and we missed one of the guidelines that was put out by the EOHLC when we did our final plan, which says that one of the zones in the MBTA, in the MTA community zoning area, needed to be at least 50% of the total area. So if you have two zones, you're fine. You've got at least 50% in one of them, or more than 50% in one of them. But we divided it into across three zones, and none of them make up a majority of the space, and therefore doesn't meet the written requirement of substantial size as they've defined it in the guidelines. So Zach has been looking at how do we ameliorate that. There's been a few options that have been passed around. We're trying to go for minimal changes. One option would be trying to find a way of connecting two of the existing zones One would be trying to move a little bit of the zone and basically grafting it to connect it, or otherwise connecting the two. One option would be more significant change, such as we've basically assumed that, for instance, adding Carbonis would just be never make it out of planning board. But if people tell me that we should bring that back to Zach, we can put that back on the table. That would solve the problem, and that it would be large enough if we just add Carbonis to the Upper Cedar District. But we've been looking at other options since that's been not something that the planning board's been excited about in the past. And so we have until the end of May, roughly, to get this passed or somehow deal with the fact that we're out of compliance. And that's when, as of last May, there was a letter that said that we were, I forget the exact words. It's like tentatively in compliance. We haven't felt the penalties yet of not being in compliance. This is where Neri can fix the wording. But if we don't fix it within 1 year of having received that letter, we'll be out of compliance, and all the penalties of not having passed a compliant law would come into effect. And so basically we have till town meeting in 2026, in May of 2026, to fix this.
You are mute.
Sorry, it's from what I know, a lot of towns were in the same boat as Hopkinton, so to speak, where they put forward a plan without getting. So, I think for the board, if anybody on our planning board wants to attend zoning advisory committee meetings to add input or their opinions, I think that's worthwhile. I didn't really have any comments on where we stand now, but Parker, go ahead.
Question and a comment. The comment first, Matt, you should definitely put Carbonis back on the map. Here's why. If we want to just achieve paper compliance and not see the property developed, the town, as part of CPC funding purchase, is finalizing a deal with purchase of that land, which is going to serve as a pump house for upcoming WRA hookup as well. There's a idea to use an A&R then to split the lot, so then the rear part of that would be open space, and it would basically make that land not buildable. The question I had though is can we achieve compliance by just drawing a line of the street between Walcott Valley and the downtown, or is that not allowed? It has to be like actual lots. So I was just wondering about that.
I think it has to be parcels that are of land, but Matthew, go ahead.
Yeah, so conditional compliance was the term I was trying to think of. So to respond to Parker's suggestions, I think that would actually cause problems because it can't be town-owned land and we can't have prohibitions on having people build on it. So that would actually rule that out. You cannot go up a street per se. As you said, Rob, it needs to be directed. It needs to be parcels. We're trying to minimize how much impact that would be. For instance, I don't know if I know Neri was digging into some research or trying to figure out if we could basically build a row of parcels just along the street and minimize the amount of space, or how much land would actually have to be there to connect it. So we're looking at those options. If people have other ideas, feel free to come to Zach and raise them, or if there's any ideas here, I can bring them back.
Neri, go ahead.
Yes, I will just add on what Matthew said. Our main focus going to be like fix in what we have rather than finding a whole new parcel. And Zach reviewed a couple of options connecting downtown and Walcott and removing like some of the downtown area, like the bottom one, where we have a fire station and where we zoned MBTA, and remove that portion, because if you are adding few more parcels, then you need to make sure that it's enough area and we don't increase the contingency. So if you increase more acres, it's gonna increase more contingencies. So that's the main goal at the moment for us. But yes, please send us suggestions if anyone do have. We received one inquiry from one of the resident who is willing to convert their property into MBTA, but that is in totally different area, and that's just 2-3 acres land, so that's not helpful.
Yeah, I looked at that parcel. I think it's actually 1.7 acres and not near, not touching any of the
Yeah.
current MBTA community zoned parcels. All right, so I guess for the purpose of our board, is there anything else we should anything else that we can think of that we need to have on the town warrant for our town meeting? I guess we got some time to finalize like what if there's anything else, but I think the purpose of tonight was to be aware of like what could be coming, and also is there anything we're missing? Lucia, go ahead.
One of the questions that I had last year when we discussed the things that came out of Zach was if we are meant to discuss those further at planning board, because when I was watching the Zach meetings, it sounded like Zach's interpretation of what they were doing was having a preliminary discussion about the potential articles, and they would come to planning board for planning board to discuss and potentially edit those before sending them in to town meeting. And I don't think we did that last year, except for MBTA. And, I don't think they came saying, this is what we think you should do. They were more like, these are the options. But if it's something where, because I know they're talking about ADUs, about editing, potentially making some changes to that bylaw, and affordable housing is also on there. So if it's something where we want to discuss those before we send them to town meeting, then we need to ensure that we're giving ourselves time to do that versus what happened last year. I'm thinking specifically with the Marguerite property, where I think Zach was like, this seems fine enough to send to planning board, but planning board can talk it through more and you could potentially make changes there. But once it came to us, it was more like, we're either accepting this as is or not.
Well, there is specifically with the Marguerite property, I think it was let the planning board has the ultimate say. So of like if they want to recommend this for town meeting or not. So let them determine if they want to recommend it for town meeting or not. That would be my take on that. Whether that's right or wrong, I don't know. That wasn't, to me, it wasn't really new. It was the same project a proposal that got turned down 2 years prior. So I don't know. I think that specific case is maybe some of us being on the board longer or than others. I think we're familiar with the project, but I do think it's better to have ample time to discuss any town meeting articles ahead of time. So we always want to put our best foot forward and put forward articles that we believe in, that will be approved. We don't want to put forward articles to have the town say, what are you guys doing? You're not listening to us. We want to be well informed by the sentiment of voters that will show up, that will come before town meeting, so they approve any town meeting articles we put forward. Parker, go ahead.
Yeah, the question I have is it under our bailiwick that we could propose a new road be constructed? Sorry, I'm like on the struggle bus to my throat. uh, to a new easement for JB Sawmill, and recommend the town consider like approaching creating a new easement for them with this Pine Field project. And I'm not trying to jump the agenda here, but just out of curiosity, if that would be something that we could recommend or consider.
You're asking me a question. I don't know. So I don't know how the original agreement came about for that easement to be in place. Aniri, do you have any, like, I don't know how to answer Parker's question.
Actually, yeah, I also don't know how that JB Mill easement came back in the years, and if we can like, I don't know, it needs to go through the town meeting process. I can check, but
Yeah, because I was reviewing past meetings, and I saw at one point John actually recommended like way back in one of the videos, he said they should put the easement as part of the Pinefield project. And then I got to thinking, like, is that even something that we would recommend? So just out of curiosity.
I will take a look.
I think the first step would be like a negotiation, because like they have rights to that easement, so it would have to be a negotiation to alter an alternative easement, and then whether it really needs town meeting approval or not, I don't know. That's what Aniri, I think you could check on. I think that, but the first part is definitely true. It have to, like, fundamentally, JB Sawmill owns the easement rights there to get to their facility. So we'd have to alter an alternative that is agreeable to them, and we could negotiate something. But the second part of what it would require for town approval, I don't know.
I guess I was thinking it would be at least an ANR on our part to subdivide the lot to do that, and probably have to do some sort of special permit or site plan approval and definitive plan recommendation. So anyway.
Lucia, do you have any more information about like what they're discussing, or maybe Matthew, you do, about ADUs and what could potentially be on the town meeting in that regard? I mean, come to us.
Are you recognizing Lucia or me?
Matthew, why don't I start with you?
Sure. So for ADUs, I don't think we're going to put anything forward. There was a suggestion that we look at ADUs in the ADU bylaws. We just made changes as a town last year to stay in compliance with changes in MGL in the state level. So we made those changes, and part of what we want to hold off is just to see what the impact of those changes have been. We've looked at a few different towns and how they've handled things both currently and prior to the statewide change about maximum size of ADUs, both in terms of relative to the primary residence as well as absolute square footage. And so right now the requirement is, I believe it's 900 square feet or 50% of the primary unit, primary residence, whichever is less. And so looking at different ways of moving those numbers and how other towns have handled that and what their impacts have been. Some of the concerns raised have just been short-term rentals in town, and the towns and past town meetings have been a little concerned about the impact of that, and just that we haven't seen enough data from the most recent change to really know how much things have shifted since the change last May to increase the flexibility of ADUs in town.
Okay. Does anyone have any more? Oh, Lucia, go ahead.
In terms of other things that we could potentially discuss on our end, a couple of things that came out of the Hopkinton drug development, I know, was a question regarding a parking garage bylaw. We don't have one. And so if it were the case that we wanted to consider whether or not we should adopt something along those lines to kind of either limit or at least give people more direction as to what it is from a town perspective that we want to see in the event of future parking garages. And then we might want to consider that. Something that came out of our talk on Osceola was the fact that our roads are not labeled private ways when they are private roads. I don't know if that's something that the town has considered in the past, but I feel like that might help alleviate some of these issues of people buying in neighborhoods where they don't realize that their road is a private road, and then they run into issues in the future. And then the third thing that also came out of Hopkinton Drug was our bylaw for the downtown business district. I remember them saying that it's unclear as to whether we require that the first floor be entirely commercial. That if you read the wording on the bylaw, it maybe suggests that it could be or should be, but it doesn't necessarily specify that. And I know they made the choice to make it all commercial so that there would be no issue when they came to the planning board. But in the future, if somebody else were to develop another large property in the downtown business district, then they might read that and say, oh, well, this doesn't specify, so we can do a mix. I don't know if the town has a feeling one way or another, whether we want purely commercial on the first floor or if we're fine with a mix. But those were my thoughts.
Okay. Matthew, I'll go to you in a minute, but Parker, Parker, go ahead.
The ideas are flowing now. Lucia, I just love I didn't come prepared for this, by the way, so sorry if this is off the cuff, but plus pointing the idea on looking at, private versus public demarcations. Surely would love that, as well as consideration for recommendation for adoption of the state statute that Carrie alluded to in some of the packet, where the town is able to do work on private roads, or it could even be commercial industrial places. This is allowed by the town, but there's a bylaw limitation that in instances of like abandoned property or, where the town would need to step in, we're kind of like prohibited right now. That was one thing, plus one of that. I don't know if this is our bailiwick too, but like a split rate property tax, if we could recommend that. And then
Parker, what do you mean by like one rate for commercial versus one rate for residential?
Yeah, so kind of like what's been coming up in Economic Development Advisory Board is, ways to close the gap between the 2030 plan. I think it was like 18 or 19% target for, commercial tax rate. Now we're like 13 and at 13%. And, so yeah, exploring ways to, shore up that gap as well.
So
Considering
that's to my knowledge, that's voted every year within the select board, whether they want to change. And I think that's their purview, is the tax rate for residential versus commercial. And right now it's always been, ever since I've lived in Hopkins, it's always been the same rate for residential and commercial. But
that's good to know. I didn't know that. And then parking maximums, consider that, especially with this recent Starbucks plan. I thought the potential where it's already hard enough to get out of your car, but we don't have any power control over that. It might be prudent to consider piggybacking off of Lucia's parking observation. And then finally, looking at where's my last note? At EDAP, we were also talking, and we recently had a couple local developers come in and talk about how there's a design constraint or there's a height bylaw for, I think it's like 33 feet, that limits the consideration of like triple deckers, and how those can be a pretty advantageous property, which will help us, close the housing affordability crisis. And then finally, another constituent brought up to me about 40Y zoning, which I think we should certainly consider 40Y. And if you haven't looked into this, it's a pretty powerful zoning district that could put in some affordable housing units with constraints for income. I think could also help it. So like if police, firefighters, teachers, folks that are in the area want to not only just work in Hopkinton, but also live here, it could help fill the gap from an affordability perspective. So I thought that could be interesting too. And then last is looking at zoning or potentially reevaluating our zoning map in the future. I don't know if we have to get like proactive endorsement from the town, but I think it's probably about time that we, reconsider that too, if we want to hit some of these growth goals, or, start to try to narrow the gap between, commercial and economic tax basis. So anyway,
so to answer your last, there's nothing that would prevent us from pursuing that. If we felt that was in the best interest, we would probably kick like our concept or ideas. If the ideas generated from us, we'd recommend to the zoning advisory committee, hey, consider this. They would consider it, maybe have public hearings and see what residents said, and then that would start that process if we wanted to change any zoning law, whether it's zoning maps or like typically an idea can come from anywhere. It can come from our board. It can come from any resident in town. It can come from the Economic Development Advisory Board. It can come from whomever. And typically it would go to the zoning advisory committee. So they start that process of trying to get public input and public hearings, and then see where that leads to basically bring it to the planning board for further discussion. Matthew, go ahead.
Thanks. Yeah, these are all great ideas, but I want to be realistic. If we're talking about this town meeting, this sort of brainstorming would be great back in June when we'd have time to have Zach look into some of them. Right now, so for instance, like what Lucia raised about the parking and other parking garage, we brought that up in Zach, but practically speaking, MBTA zoning is going to take all the time we have until we can hand it over to the planning board. And it's been hard enough to get meetings as it is, as some of the people that we've appointed just haven't shown up. So just getting quorum has been hard enough. So we're doing the best we can with MBTA zoning. I think it would be good to figure out what our priorities are when we start the board after the next elections. I know a couple of years ago, one of the things that we were focusing on was working with DPW to connect parts of the town together, for instance. But that requires a lot of focus. When I don't know if that ship has sailed right now, because that was with state funding that probably isn't there anymore. So I think it's something that we need to focus when we have a fresh board and we can't jam into the end of the year. Yeah, I appreciate all the ideas.
There, like I have several things on that I've wanted to recommend to the zoning advisory committee to discuss, but I've just like one of the things is like how is the building heights calculated? I find it strange, the Hopkins redevelopment, like the building height on one side it can be above the maximum height, and the other side it can be below, and how that's calculated it doesn't make sense to me. But anyways, I do think the zoning advisory committee will be kind of, as Matthew said, pretty much all out to try to on the MBTA community discussion. But maybe I wrote down these items that Parker mentioned, that Lucia mentioned, and we can kind of create a running list. And when the new board's in place, or when the time frees up, we can have them start the process of having dialogue about all these items, because there's a lot of things that Hopkins grown a lot over the past 20-30 years, and some things like a parking garage, I don't think we really had to consider that really ever, to be honest, especially in our downtown district. So probably should consider it. All right. So I'm going to move on to our next agenda item. This is kind of does anyone have any last minute things, or everyone good moving on to item 2? All right. The public hearing is open. So we're going to discuss 66 Fruit Street, the Pine Field Athletic Facility. John, I see you on. Colleen, I see you on. Who would like to kick us off with like an update? Like we last met 4 weeks ago at this point, I think it was. So could you give us an update of where you are, where things are? Like we saw the materials, or at least I saw the materials today and read them earlier. But an update would be great.
Sure. Yeah. So right now, there hasn't been much of an update in terms of design because we have orders from the Park and Rec Commission basically to halt any additional money spent on designs until we hear back from this board. And my understanding was that you guys were waiting to hear back from Pear Corporation on the peer review and to weigh in on that. Essentially, right now, we have at least internally started to look at all options of this field. As it's currently designed, do we have other options on this parcel of land? Do we start looking at other locations? But we wanted to hear a final recommendation from this planning board based on the peer review from Pear Corporation. Gale Associates provided answers to all of the questions that the Pear Corporation had and submitted those. So anyone can ask any questions for clarification. But to me, there's a few glaring things that obviously this board brought up, which this peer review does not really address, mainly the safety concerns, the distance walking to the field, the lack of a ramp for strollers. Everything in my mind sort of holding this project is not really here in this peer review. In addition, another thing that we had discussed internally was the hours of operation for the JB Sawmill business, and also when we would be using the field, that majority of the time there is not overlap. The Saturday business hours in the morning would be the trickiest part, but there's no overlap on Sunday. And the use that we have Monday through Friday is generally 4 or even 4:30 p.m., which is right around when the JB Sawmill concludes their business. I do understand they have some late night trucks that come, but I just wanted to sort of bring that point up again, because I know that was a concern as well about the trucks coming through with baseball and cricket. And really, we're looking for feedback from this board based on the peer review. So that's sort of where we're at right now.
So John, I'll kick us off. I agree with you that I don't think the peer review brings out what's difficult, at least in my mind. What's difficult is what we talked about last time, is I have general safety concerns that it's just. So I've coached Little League, I've coached many sports as a coach of like 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds, 8-year-olds, 9-year-olds. You can't lead, like it's the parent coach who's coaching all these kids. It's their responsibility to stay with all the kids until the parent physically is picking up the kid. So you have to see the parent and you have to see the parent pick up the kid. If the parent picking up a child has a newborn and then maybe a toddler and then they've got a 6-year-old that's playing on the baseball field or the softball team, I just don't know how that process is going to work when the parking lot is that far away. I don't know how it's going to work when a softball coach or a baseball coach has to carry baseball bats, catching gear, helmets, a bucket of balls, and it's that far away. So what I think is going to happen, I think people are going to pick up or drop off along Fruit Street, or they're going to pick up and drop off and queue with their cars idling along the easement. And so from my perspective, like the peer review report is part of our process and is extremely important. But I don't know, from my opinion hasn't changed on the safety concerns. Does any other inputs from the board are welcome?
Through the chair.
Parker, go ahead.
Yeah, I watched the video and, wasn't there for when we initially talked about this. I think it's a good plan from the course of the use of that property. I think for me that it's the easement question is, can we, because I would look back in the previous, meetings, and there was, I think it was actually a Park and Rec meeting, now that I'm recalling correctly, that there was a observation made, well, why don't we just, put the, easement in a different place? And then that just takes that out of, the realm of possibility from safety concern. Well, we can't. I think that there's a safety concern anywhere where there's a road and people walking around them, there's a potential for somebody to get hurt. And so we can't abundantly say like, oh, because there's traffic exists in suburbia is what we have today in this, suburban sprawl that we live in. But, my feeling is like the plan started off well intentioned, and now and then it grew to this, plan that we see today, cricket, baseball plus parking lot. I think it makes sense to then be able to use other parts of that parcel in the future, especially for Parks and Rec. But like that also wasn't really what the town voted on, when they voted to approve a cricket pitch improvement. And so there's some like agita happening in CPC right now where folks are even wondering, like on that board, if like this should be voted to approve additional funding, given there's so much, questioning on if the original, funding amount, that was approved by the town, and then the scope creep, which has resulted in now needing to have more, funding from the town, if the town's even going to have an appetite to pass something like this. And so we're kind of like, meanwhile, we're adding more Christmas, just this tis the season, we're adding more ornaments onto this tree of saying a parking lot requirement to have EV, which that also wasn't voted on by the town, but is a late breaking, requirement as part of the new bylaws. And so folks, we're like, we keep giving, more and more input in this project just because of like scope creep and traditional corporate sites can sometimes lead to, failure or failure to launch. I mean, my question is like, we bear it down to this simple essence of like what it is that's of concern from safety. Trucks next to kids, move the easement, that solves that. If it's people parking on the easement, moving the easement, and then having consolidated cricket and baseball field and parking in one instead of trying to subdivide them, which was an observation on CPC in our last meeting, means that everything, like what you're saying, Robert, everything's condensed on one property. Now you just have a scheduling problem instead of having a funding problem to try and get more from the town. So like I think just breaking this down into, how do we address each of the, concerns, but then, get a tangible way forward. I think the last thing that I want to just, drive forth is like, this only helps us to, get better services or better, facilities, I think in the long term, but it's like, how do we do so in a frugal way that's without the scope creep? So that's my 10 cents kind of meandering.
Thanks, Parker. So I'm not sure what to do at this point, John, for your benefit.
Can I ask a couple follow-up questions?
Sure.
I was just giving the opportunity for anyone else to speak. Is there a design that would put these fears to rest? So in other words, if we were to separate, Parker made some excellent points. I didn't even talk about the budget, which is a whole nother topic to this project, but I didn't see pertaining to this as much. Depending on where this decision comes, that can affect our budget. But my question was really around if we were to separate, the two baseball and the cricket into two parcels there, and have parking lots on each side of it, so that there would be no crossing of that easement. Would the board be in favor of that? We're sort of looking at all options of that design. So if where the current baseball field is, we change that to, let's just say, the cricket field with parking up above there. And then down below, we put the baseball field with another parking lot down there. Would that be something that would
That would go, so I'll speak for myself. That would go a long way to ease my concerns. That way, any of the issues of queuing would most likely go away. Any issues of where is somebody going to turn around would go away. Any issues of childs being on the easement, like out of a car, just kind of running around or having to cross it because their parent is waiting in the car would go away. So it would go a long way to making this a very viable project in my mind. Like, I'm sure there's some details that would have to, like, I'd be interested in, but at a high level, it would ease my concerns for sure.
My next question really was around where the crosswalk is currently situated. So our original design was actually up towards where the handicap parking is right now, more towards at the top of the hill where it's a straight grade. Would that be an option that would help? Is it? I want to understand fully where the safety concern is. Is it trucks driving or crossing in general, or is it the downward slope that they're coming down? Just a few questions around the actual concerns of the trucks.
It's so I'll let Lucy, I'll let you speak in a minute, but my concerns are potential having kids, mostly kids, but it could be parents too, not really realizing there's potentially large vehicles going across that, not paying attention, but especially in this case of kids needing to get back to their car for some reason. Maybe the parent's waiting for them, maybe it's raining. And if the parent is parked in the parking lot and the kid's just running across, and think of like that's I think like one near miss situation would be like a situation where people wouldn't really like that would spread very fast, that news, and then people would be parking along Fruit Street or staying in their cars. And I don't want a solution that where it's really viable that people are going to queue along the easement, or that really kids would need to cross that easement kind of on a just to use the field basis, potentially without parents. And like it could be that they're on their own to get to the car. Lucia, go ahead.
I agree with a lot of what Rob said, but I don't think you even need a near miss to cause people to not use the parking lot. When you're putting it far away where you can't even see it from the field, where it's going to be very inconvenient for families, whether they have little kids or whether they have elderly grandparents. I think if you're setting the parking lot that far away, you're going to have people queuing on the easement, and you're going to be dealing with all of the things that you already don't want to be dealing with that you're trying to resolve by creating a parking lot. So I think it needs to be as convenient as possible. And what you were suggesting in terms of having a field with a parking lot and then a separate one with a parking lot right next to it, I think that would alleviate a combination of factors, including safety issues, but also just increase the convenience where you're not going to have the queuing that you're trying to avoid.
Mike, did you want to make a comment?
Yeah, I think Lucia kind of covered it. I was just going to say, I don't think there's really any kind of orientation or scenario where you could have the parking lot so far away and like change the area where people are crossing that would kind of alleviate the concerns I have. It's just with the way it's set up, I think people would be, either trying to park near the handicapped area or queuing to drop people off. It's just kind of the nature of the way it would be with the parking lot so far away. So I think tucking one into each field would probably be the most viable option forward.
Parker, go ahead.
So I'm totally playing John Madden right now. Can I share my screen?
Sure.
Like, this is what I'm wondering if this could be like the viable way forward is like if we basically say, hey, let's do an easement that goes all the way along this side of the property, that then we just have to sponsor it. If it's us or if it's Parks and Rec, I don't know, sponsor an article at town meeting to ask for funding to do an easement. So then they can just essentially, just not have to go this way. And now we can basically have this whole area freed up for, parking, park traffic, essentially we'll call it. And so the trucks are totally out of the equation. Just shift the fields up if you want to do that. Or better yet, just make the cricket field here, parking here, baseball field here, parking here. And now, you have your, allocated parking, and there's no conflict between Sawmill, and also they get a nice new road, and they get to we don't have to fear about like kids getting out of cars even though I don't really think it's that much of seeing how slow the trucks were going, they were being very safe. But this could be a compromise is kind of my question. And could we pursue something like that?
I think that is something, Aneri, if you could add, just because I don't know and I'm curious, ask like our town manager, or maybe I don't know. Like I've never done anything or tried to attempt anything like that on the board.
Can I give a little perspective on that? Just because we did discuss that very early on.
Sure, go ahead.
Right where he drew that, Parker drew that, was exactly where we looked before. Long story short, very, very early on, for a myriad of reasons, it was turned down. We were going to bring it to CPC from Parks and Recreation and to build that road. Speaking with abutters on the south side of that, they had concern with trucks going by. I believe the Sawmill, I see Neil ready to speak. I believe they had some issues with angles and trucks being able to turn left or right. We did look at the design of that, and ultimately the Parks and Rec Commission decided not to pursue that angle, but that was before we got to this point. So, at this point, maybe all options are open.
Thanks, John. Vic, go ahead.
The Parkers idea is good, but I also just wanted to check out that when we go back, would it increase the cost for us from a budget point of view? And that needs to be also taken into consideration for this, because this is like a complete 360-degree shift on what we had it and what we budgeted for. So when we go back, that's also, I'm not
Vic,
sure.
I think that's why I think the general problem is that conceptually, to redevelop land into usable active recreation fields doesn't sound like it should be that expensive, but there's these factors on this site that make it harder, and that's why I think what John has been battling, and I think the Colleen as the designer has been battling. There's lots of conflicting points of view to make it easy and inexpensive, and that's why we're here. I think that's why we are where we are. If it was easy, it'd be we'd be reviewing the peer review consultant report right now and saying, okay, let's follow our process and let's move things forward. But it's not. Has not seemed to be easy, and I'm only a little bit involved. I'm sure John and others have been working on this a long time, and it's been hard, and that difficulty has made it to a point where it's also expensive.
That's all I was trying to complete to that, but
Yeah.
thank you for completing my sentence.
Vic, there is the maintenance cost of this fields is a consideration that could prohibit us as well, because we have heard from the cricket community and also baseball that could be a problem, and it would be directly recovered from user fees and permits to cover the cost of maintenance for these fields. So
Thanks, John. Yep, that's actually a valid point. I agree. Building is different, but maintenance is what the real challenge we get into.
I don't know if anybody on the board wants to get it into like we can get into all the details of the peer review report. Like I know in the design they're asking for a waiver about EV parking. We took a straw poll last time where we said we wouldn't be in favor, we wouldn't support that. I think most of the other things, to be honest, could be worked out. I don't know if it's going to be productive to spend time going through that right now, because I think the project, at least from my point of view, I would not vote yes to support this project as designed because of this what I view as just safety concerns. So if people feel materially different, we can go through that process. John, I don't know what would be helpful for you on that regard.
Yeah, well, I mean, let's to be frank, right? If the board has a straw poll last time and the opinions haven't changed, I'm not sure what benefit it would be. You know, I'm sure if Colleen and I were to go back to the design and planning part, I'm sure certain answers would be helpful. Can I ask you another follow-up question? If we were to split this into two separate fields and have two separate parking lots, would we have to have EV chargers in both parking lots, or would one parking lot suffice for that? Or maybe you can't answer that now. I don't know.
I have no idea from a zoning point of view because it's a single parcel, right, Aniri?
Yeah. I think it's a two parcel. One is the top one and one is the bigger one where the parking lot is right now, if I'm not wrong.
So John, I don't know that answer off the top of my head.
Yeah. John, I need to sorry to interrupt here, but yeah, I need to see the basic design and see if it's a two lot, then sometimes it's trigger EV charging zoning requirement. Sometimes it's not, depends upon how many parking you are planning to put and the parking lot size, space basically. So
Parker, go ahead.
Yeah, if you think of logistics on how this project has to move forward in terms of next steps, there's going to be an article that because CPC is waiting to hear what planning board is going to say based on this, meeting on if they're going to approve additional, funding for the project. Because we have two separate articles right now that we're going to recommend for town meeting, and that's contingent on this meeting. And so if we're deadlocked, it's probably going to lead this project to die. And what my question would be is if a compromise could be struck on the board. I personally don't know why we're mandating the EV charging ports, because that wasn't part of the original scope of the project when this was originally approved at town meeting. And so I think what probably would be the right thing to do is, instead of us making that decision, we put it on the town to decide if they think that should be part of the scope of this project, because they ultimately voted on this before, and they're going to have to vote to approve the additional funding anyway to support this. So if we put that to the side and say, okay, that's not in scope as part of our discussions, then it becomes on, are we as a board then going to approve a split field, two parking lot project, or, could we pursue a plan where there's that easement, adjustment, like I was talking about before, and those are essentially the two ways forward that, Parks and Rec has and can bring back for potential site plan and, redesign and engineer. And if one of those feels like a good step forward for this board, then, we move forward that way. But otherwise, if we're gridlocked and deadlocked, I can tell you more than likely that there's not going to be a funding recommendation by, CPC for additional funds. And frankly, it sounds like based on the appetite of Parks and Rec, they're just going to pull out anyway. That's my feeling on how we should move forward with this, but I don't know if other folks disagree.
To the chair.
Go ahead.
Just thinking about, I appreciate everything everybody said, but just thinking about it, forget safety and all the other concerns, just thinking about it, math wise, and what Parker's saying about funding. If we put the parking lot far away and nobody uses it, well, that's wasted money. As I don't want to pay for something I'm not going to use. I'd rather pay for something I'm going to use. So if we're going to put money in to make these usable fields, we should support putting money in to make them usable fields. If we're going to put money into a parking lot just to say we've got a parking lot and nobody's going to use it, how is that any better efficient use of funding?
Well, if nobody's going to use it, it's not a good use of resources. Vic, did you have a comment?
No, I'm not just covered. That was my comment actually.
Through the chair.
Aniri, 1 second, Parker. Aniri, did you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted to tell board if board wants to ask any questions to Emma. She's here from Pear Corporation. She can also answer a couple of questions if board wants to ask her.
Okay. What? Emma, can you give us like your verbal overview in like under 5 minutes?
Just kind of overview for the peer review comments.
Yep, exactly.
Okay. Yeah, so I originally had, I think, 41 comments on the review. Then we received response to comments and some updated plans. I have 9 comments still that I think need either some discussion or might be a little back and forth that I don't believe that they were fully addressed. Some of them might cause a change to the design with the layout, particularly the dugouts and the feedback from the building official. So I could discuss some of those if you'd like to.
Yeah, let's just go through those 9 so at least we all hear them out loud and
Okay. So one of the comments is that the third baseline dugout is located within the required minimum setback from the street line. I had not spoken to the building official directly. Aniri had reached out just to confirm to make sure that it was a relevant comment. And the response from them was that it would be considered a structure.
Okay.
So that would need to be relocated.
And that's, sorry, Colleen Fowler with Gale. That's like just a overhead structure with, I think, 4 posts in the corners. It's an open air with just chain link fence around. So that would still then qualify for those setbacks is what you're saying.
That was the response for the email that Aniri forwarded me from the building official.
Okay.
It might require some follow-up with them. If you disagree with that, just that was the original wording that I received from them.
Okay, good to know.
Yes. I had a comment about the landscaping requirements at the parking lot. So it was a multi-part comment. There were requirements for the perimeter to be landscaped with a screen from the parking lot. In zoning bylaws, it states that there can be an exception for plantings along the perimeter of the parking lot in the cases where the parking lot does not abut the adjacent property, but that's subject to the approval of the planning board. Although the other sections, so like 2 through 7 of that zoning requirement, it doesn't state anything about that reference. So relief may be required if they're intending to not install any landscaping there. Similarly, the regulations about the granite curb placement, because vertical berm is proposed instead of granite curb where it's required, so relief may be needed from that requirement. For the level spreader, there are requirements from the Massachusetts Stormwater Manual is stating about the slope leading into the level spreader and some other comments particulars for there. I guess our concern following the response from Gale was if they could include some information about the depth that's going to be created by the granite curb between the existing ground. There's nothing shown on the detail, just to show any water ponding before it actually tops the curb, just to actually work as level spreaders generally intended to. So it's more of providing more detail, not a particular comment. There were really 2 comments. I believe that they'd stated that improvements, changes to the plan would be made with the construction plan set. I know typically most changes are made before the planning board would approve the plans, or make it a condition of approval. So I believe those should be addressed before the plan would be approved, instead of waiting until construction. And then I had some specific comments on the drainage report. I don't know if you want to go into the specific details of those now, or I can just follow up with our response to comment letter.
Colleen, did you have anything specific you wanted to hear, or?
No, I think just yeah, if you get us the response, that's fine. And again, I think the responses we tried to say about making the changes before construction were more at the direction of Parks and Rec, not wanting us to do all of this redesign without knowing if it was going to move forward. So I agree. I mean, I think if we were to be moving forward, we would make those changes. We were just trying to hold off on, putting too much more money into this without knowing how it was moving forward.
So let me just add my final thoughts here. Parker, I have the same concerns as you, where we're not supportive of the current plan. I am concerned that funding will dry up and it will not move forward. So let me at least give you as clear as John and Colleen, let me give you like my opinion kind of as clearly as I can. I think for this site right now you've got the lower field where people can park off and if a giant 18-wheeler is coming through, the cars are kind of off to the side, but by and large, people aren't using that field much. Just as you said, there's not a lot of overlap. So that lower field, trucks can still get by because there's fundamentally parking width, and so you don't necessarily have cars coming and going each way. And on the upper field today, you don't have trucks going one way necessarily at the same time as cars going the other way because the parking's right there. So cars can get off before like a truck really needs to pass a car. In this design, as it stands, for the handicap parking, or if somebody's going to drop somebody off and turn around in the handicap parking, or somebody's going to drop somebody off and turn around in Sawmill property, like you could have on that upper part of the easement trucks going by cars at the same time, and I don't think that's I don't think that's that easement wasn't designed to support that. That easement isn't meant to support that. So I think that's a problem with the design. I think there's a problem with having the parking so far away that it's a lot of people. I see a lot of challenges with needing to park that far away when you have to pick somebody up from a practice, drop somebody off from a practice. And so they're going to either go up that easement, drop them off, turn around, or they're going to drop. I think probably most likely they would drop them off on Fruit Street. And at the end of practice, you'd have cars queuing along Fruit Street, which for the baseball or softball fields. And that's not an intended side effect here. So I think the only plans that work are ones where you don't need to have children crossing that easement on a regular basis, and you don't necessarily have cars going in opposite directions of JV Sawmill vehicles, like large vehicles. The easement, I don't think, can support that with regularity. Right now, because the way where the parking is, it can, because people can just get off of that easement. So that's my take. I would prefer not to go through the rest of our process and move to a vote. I would rather leave it the public hearing open unless you want us to do that.
I have a Park and Rec Commission meeting tomorrow night to give them an update. And I think a lot's going to be determined tomorrow night and where we go with this project, whether we pull our application or we continue. So can I get back to you after tomorrow night?
Sure.
Okay.
All right, Aneri, do I have to extend a decision deadline for this project?
Yes, for stormwater, and it's going to be January 12th, the extended deadline, because next hearing is going to be on January 5th.
Okay.
Through the chair.
Parker, go ahead.
When do articles have to be submitted to town to be on the warrant for town meeting?
End of the month. January end of the month.
Okay. Yeah, my feeling is like, is there enough time that if John wanted to pursue a proposal of having the easement altered or like improved to that was the south side of the field, is there enough time to allow for that warrant to be put, from a process perspective? Or could we, because they have to have a decision now from us or next meeting. And if we are making a decision, it's going to be on one of the two plans. So are we committing then as a board today to hear out those two plans? And that's the guidance John's going to take back to the Park and Rec department if they want to pursue that? Or like what's our guidance that we need to see in order to, give a green light? Because otherwise I think this project's like dead in the water.
Parker, I feel like I just did that. That any plans not that a plan that doesn't have children crossing the easement on purpose would be a step in the right direction, and a plan that doesn't require traffic in opposite directions on the upper part of that easement, at least with any regularity, where that would be the norm, where there's nowhere to pull off or have some relief that the vehicle, like right now, those cars can get out of the way because they can go into the parking lot. But if there's a fence there and there's a truck coming the other way, somebody's going to have to back up. Like, I don't see it wide enough necessarily with a fence there, and the other side of the easement, there's kind of a steeper drop off where you're going to have cars and oversized wide load trailers coming through that can pass at the same time. I could be wrong, but maybe it's physically technically possible, but it's not definitely not a preferred thing to have happen. All right. So our next meeting is January 5th, Aneri.
Yes.
I'd like to continue the public hearing for 66 Fruit Street major projects site plan and stormwater management permit to January 5th, and the stormwater decision deadline to January 12th.
So moved.
Second.
Thanks, Michael. Roll call vote. Matthew Ronca,
Yes.
Elise Mayalowski,
Yes.
Lucia Lopez,
Yes.
Michael King,
Yes.
Parker Happ,
Yes.
Vikas Sathpathy,
Yes.
Amna Dewan,
Yes.
and Rob Benson is a yes. All right. Thanks, everybody. Let's on to, so this that's the end of our agenda. So at this time, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn for this evening.
So moved.
Thanks,
Second.
Matthew. Thanks, Michael. Roll call vote. Matthew Ronca,
Yes.
Elise Mayalowski,
Yes.
Lucia Lopez,
Yes.
Michael King,
Yes.
Parker Happ,
Yes.
Vikas Prati,
Yes.
Amna Dewan,
Yes.
and Rob Benson is yes. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas. Happy holidays.
Yep. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Bye.